Welcome to the deep dive, where we basically take all the sources you've been sending our way and get right to the stuff you really want to know.
And fast.
Fast, yeah.
Yay.
Like a deep dive.
Exactly.
Today we're tackling, you sent us this awesome Reader's Digest article, and it is just packed with unsolved mysteries. I mean, we're talking everything from, like, people just vanishing off the face of the earth to some really bizarre events.
It's like tapping into that part of us that just, needs to figure things out,
Yeah.
Those mysteries that just grab you and won't let go.
Totally. And your mission, should you choose to accept it, which, let's be honest, you already have because you sent this in, is to wrap your head around some of the most baffling, head-scratching mysteries out there.
The ones that make you go, huh?
Exactly. And for a little extra context, we'll be pulling some background info from that Wikipedia entry you also sent on the Unsolved Mysteries TV show. Remember that?
Oh, yeah, classic.
So think of this deep dive as your express lane to becoming a total mystery buff without having to wade through mountains of info.
We're here to do the heavy lifting and give you those juicy nuggets of knowledge.
Exactly. Okay, so buckle up because we're diving straight into the deep end with our first case, and this one's a real chiller. The Dyatlov Pass incident.
Ooh, yeah, that one's a classic.
Imagine this. February 1959, right? 9 experienced ski hikers, like they knew their stuff, out in the Ural Mountains of Russia, and they just disappear. Poof, gone.
And how they found them, I mean, just the scene itself, right? Like, right off the bat, it's creepy. Their tent was on a slope, all ripped open from the inside.
From the inside? Wait, what?
Yeah. And then there are these tracks leading away from the tent towards a nearby wood, but they're all messed up. Boot prints, some sock prints, even bare feet. Doesn't make sense, does it?
That's weird.
Yeah.
So they find some of the bodies in the wood, and they're missing shoes. Some are only in their underwear.
Right. Like, at first you think, okay, hypothermia, that makes sense. Terrible, but it happens.
Mm.
But then the medical examiners start looking closer, and the whole thing goes from tragic to just plain bizarre.
Yeah, like how bizarre?
Like blunt force trauma, bizarre. We're talking internal injuries. Some had third-degree burns. One was missing their tongue. Another had vomited blood.
Whoa.
And then get this. Some of their clothes were radioactive.
Radioactive. Okay, now that's too weird. Like, what could even explain all that? It's like a puzzle where none of the pieces fit.
Right. I mean, hypothermia doesn't cause those kinds of injuries. It's like something else happens, something sudden and violent.
Okay, so naturally the theories start flying. We've got everything from, like, KGB shenanigans, drug-induced weirdness, to the old standbys, UFOs, and even, wait for it, a Russian Yeti.
Come on, a Yeti.
Hey, I'm just, covering all the bases here.
Okay.
But there's this one theory I found really interesting, the infrasound theory. Apparently, the way the wind hits those mountains can create this, like, almost silent hum called infrasound.
Infrasound, right. Yeah, those are like sound waves, but with frequencies too low for us to hear.
Right, exactly. And it can mess with your body, like, big time. Nausea, panic, dread, even hallucinations. So the theory goes, this infrasound freaked out the hikers, made them do crazy stuff like run out of their tent half-dressed.
That's actually a really compelling theory because, I mean, infrasound's a real thing. It can totally mess with your head, your body. And the thing is, it's natural. It's not some weapon or anything, right? It's just the way the wind interacts with the landscape.
So, like, nature itself could have driven them to do all this crazy stuff. Spooky.
Yeah. I mean, it blurs the lines between what we can explain and what we can't, right?
Yeah. And that's basically where this case ends up. The Reader's Digest article puts it well. The only thing everyone seems to agree on is that whatever happened, it was an overwhelming and possibly inhuman force.
Still gives me chills.
Me too. Okay, from the freezing Russian mountains to something a little more recent but equally weird, the Havana Syndrome.
Ah, yes. This all started back in December 2016 in Havana, Cuba. You had a CIA officer suddenly getting hit with nausea, headaches, dizziness, and then more and more American diplomats stationed there, and even some Canadians, started reporting these, like, really similar symptoms.
By late 2018, it was a lot of people, right? Like dozens.
Dozens.
And the symptoms themselves were pretty specific and kind of scary. I mean, nausea, hearing loss, vertigo, even nosebleeds. Some had trouble concentrating, focusing. Like, what is going on?
Right. And the really weird part is what they think triggered it. A lot of these folks reported hearing this strange sound in their homes or hotel rooms.
A sound? Like what kind of sound?
That's the thing. The descriptions are all over the place. Some said it was high-pitched. Others described it as a beam of sound, like targeted. And some said it was like marbles rolling around.
Marbles. That's specific.
I know, right? And the doctors, they were stumped. I mean, some folks had concussion-like symptoms, but no actual concussions.
So immediately you start thinking, okay, was this some kind of attack? I mean, Cuba, CIA.
Yeah, the Cuban government was definitely a suspect at first, but they've always denied it. And to be honest, even some American investigators weren't so sure. It's tricky, international relations, it's always a bit of a minefield.
And the lack of evidence, right? Like, was it some super secret weapon?
Well, the CIA has said on record that they don't know of any weapon that could do this, cause these specific symptoms.
Huh.
There was this idea about ultrasound, maybe from covert listening devices placed too close together, creating feedback or something. But the FBI looked into it, and they couldn't find any evidence for that. Plus, ultrasound is, we can't even hear it.
Right. Okay, so that's a bust. Then there's the cricket theory.
Ah, yes, the crickets. You see, some scientists, they got a hold of some recordings of this mysterious sound, and they actually identified it as the mating calls of male crickets.
Crickets?
Crickets? Apparently, they can be really loud. But of course, no one's really buying that, crickets causing all this.
Yeah, that does seem like a bit of a stretch. So where does that leave us? Stress.
Well, there's this theory, the high-stress post theory. The idea is being a diplomat in Cuba, especially then, with all the surveillance and tension, it could really mess with you.
Like mess with you enough to cause all these symptoms.
Well, that's the theory. But then you have the incidents in China.
Right. I was just going to say, this wasn't just a Cuba thing. In May 2018, at the U.S. consulate in Guangzhou, boom, same thing, similar illnesses. They even evacuated 15 Americans. So much for the stress of Cuba theory, right?
Yeah, that one kind of falls apart there. It does look like there might be something bigger at play, something we just haven't figured out yet.
Yeah. And like the Reader's Digest article says, the end result has been fewer diplomats in both Cuba and the U.S., like a new kind of Cold War. Crazy.
It really is.
Okay. Time for a change of scenery. Let's leave dry land behind and set sail for one of the most famous maritime mysteries of all time, the ghost ship Mary Celeste.
Ah, the Mary Celeste. December 4th, 1872. This empty ship, a British-American brigantine to be precise, is found just drifting in the Atlantic Ocean.
Just drifting, like no crew, nothing.
Right. But here's the thing. The ship was in great shape, seaworthy, and the cargo was untouched. The only thing missing was a lifeboat, and it looked like it had been boarded in an orderly way, not like a panic situation.
That is weird.
Yeah.
So back up, where was the ship even going?
The Mary Celeste set sail from New York in November 1872, headed for Genoa, Italy. On board, you had Captain Benjamin Briggs, his wife, and their little daughter, plus 7 crew members. They had plenty of supplies, like 6 months' worth, and even some, luxury items for the time. A sewing machine, an upright piano, just a normal voyage.
Wow, so what happened? Why would they just abandon a perfectly good ship?
Right. And the last log entry, nothing unusual. Inside the ship, no signs of a struggle, no violence, nothing. It just doesn't make sense.
Okay, so what are the theories? Mutiny. Pirates.
Oh, there are tons. Mutiny, pirates, you name it. Giant octopus attack, sea monster abduction.
A giant octopus. Really?
Hey, I'm just telling you what's out there.
Okay.
But there's this one theory, a more recent one, that's actually pretty interesting. It has to do with fumes from the alcohol they were transporting.
Alcohol fumes.
Yeah. Apparently, under the right conditions, these fumes from the alcohol in the cargo hold could have built up and caused the kind of flash explosion. Like, it wouldn't have set the ship on fire, but it would have been a huge bang, enough to make them think the whole thing was about to blow.
So they freaked out and abandoned ship. Makes sense, kinda. But what happened to them in the lifeboat?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? The Mary Celeste, a true ghost ship sailing into the annals of history.
So creepy. All right, from the high seas to the wild blue yonder, let's talk about a guy who took flying high to a whole new level, D.B. Cooper.
D.B. Cooper, November 24th, 1971. This guy, calling himself Dan Cooper at the time, boarded Northwest Airlines Flight 305. Pretty normal-looking dude. He was in his 40s, dark suit, black tie, even a tie clip.
He was all dressed up for a hijacking.
Yeah, he even paid for his bourbon and soda with cash, polite as can be. Just your average, everyday skyjacker.
Okay, so what happened?
Well, shortly after takeoff, Portland to Seattle, he slips a note to the flight attendant. Bomb threat.
Oh, boy.
But here's where it gets interesting. His demands were pretty specific. $200,000 in cash, 4 parachutes, and a fuel truck ready and waiting when they landed in Seattle.
$200,000. That's like $1,000,000 today.
Right. Bold move.
So did the airline play along?
They did. They didn't want to risk it, obviously. And the passengers, they had no clue what was going on. They were just told there was a minor technical issue causing the delay.
Classic.
So they land in Seattle. He gets the cash and parachutes, lets all the passengers and 2 of the flight attendants go free.
Okay. So far, so good, I guess. But then what?
Here's the crazy part. He tells the remaining crew to take off again, fly southeast toward Mexico, refuel in Nevada.
He was really planning this out.
Yeah. And about 2 hours later, somewhere over the Pacific Northwest, in the middle of a storm no less, this guy jumps out of the back of the Boeing 727.
He jumped with a parachute, right?
The parachute, yeah.
Yeah.
And get this, he just vanishes. Gone. Never seen again.
I mean, I know they call him D.B. Cooper, but was that even his real name?
Well, it turns out D.B. Cooper was a media mix-up. But the name stuck. The crazy thing is they never found him. No trace, no body, nothing. The ransom money never used. Like he just vanished into thin air.
Like a ghost.
Well, almost. Then, in 1980, a kid playing by the Columbia River in Oregon finds some of the ransom money. Serial numbers matched, the whole 9 yards. They searched everywhere, but nothing.
So he could have survived.
It's possible. And there have been some fun theories over the years, like remember Don Draper from Mad Men? Some people think he was D.B. Cooper on the side.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And just a few years ago, in 2017, they found a parachute strap at a possible landing site. But still, so many questions. Did he make it? Did he have help? We might never know.
Talk about an unsolved mystery. Okay, let's switch gears again. From a daring skyjacker to a really creepy medical mystery, living statues. The victims of encephalitis lethargica.
This was pretty scary. So between 1917 and 1928, something truly bizarre happened. Like 500,000 people worldwide were hit with this disease, encephalitis lethargica, and they basically became living statues.
Living statues, like what does that even mean?
Imagine being completely frozen, unable to move a muscle, but you're fully conscious. You can see, hear, you're aware of everything, but your body just won't respond. Terrifying. Right?
That's awful.
Yeah. It spread like wildfire, became a global epidemic by 1919, and it was deadly. About a third of the people who got it died.
A third. That's a lot.
It is. And for those who survived, almost half of them were left in this frozen state. Like imagine being trapped inside your own body, aware of everything, but unable to move, speak, interact.
That's a nightmare. Like something out of a horror movie.
It really is. And the doctors back then, they had no clue what was causing it. These poor people, they would just sit there motionless for hours, days, sometimes even longer. Occasionally they might mutter a word or two or their eyes would move. Sometimes they would even burst out laughing for no apparent reason.
That's so creepy. So what caused it? Any ideas?
The main theory is that it was some kind of brain inflammation, maybe triggered by a specific strain of Streptococcus bacteria, the same kind that causes strep throat.
So like a common bacteria gone rogue.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The idea is that for some reason the body's immune system goes haywire and starts attacking the brain.
That's so scary. So what happened? Did it just like disappear?
It pretty much vanished by the late 1920s, as mysteriously as it appeared. But there have been a few isolated cases since then. Like in the 1950s, there were some reports in Europe. And even more recently, about 10 years ago, a young girl in China had something very similar.
Wow, so it could come back.
It's a scary thought, isn't it? And there was this study in 2004 that suggested whatever caused encephalitis lethargica might still be around, maybe dormant, like waiting to strike again.
That's a chilling thought. Okay, from a medical mystery to one shrouded in secrecy, Area 51.
Ah, Area 51. This place is like the holy grail of conspiracy theories. It's a U.S. military base way out in the Nevada desert, and for the longest time, the government wouldn't even admit it existed.
Did it at it completely?
Yep, until 2013. There was a FOIA request, Freedom of Information Act, where the public can request government documents. Well, they finally released some documents, and boom, Area 51 confirmed.
Wow.
But of course, they didn't say what goes on there. All they said was that it's used for developing and testing, experimental aircraft and weapons.
Right, the top secret stuff.
Exactly. And the secrecy is crazy. I mean, you can look at satellite images, but you can't really see much.
Right.
And the people who work there, they're flown in and out on these unmarked planes, nicknamed Janet. And even the windows are covered up.
Super secretive. So naturally, people's imaginations run wild.
Oh, yeah. And the biggest theory, of course, is aliens. Like, people think Area 51 is where they keep all the crashed UFOs and maybe even do experiments on aliens.
Aliens,
I
right.
mean, who knows? It's Area 51.
Okay, what else? What other theories are floating around?
Oh, you name it. Time travel, teleportation, secret meetings with extraterrestrials, weather control, a one-world government, all the good stuff.
The good stuff. So, like, where do these theories even come from? I mean, it's not like the government's giving out hints or anything.
Well, that's the funny thing. The origin of these theories is almost as big a mystery as Area 51 itself. But, humans, we love a good conspiracy, especially when there's secrecy and the unknown. It's like our brains just can't resist filling in the blanks.
Yeah, it's like that whole moon landing hoax thing. I mean, come on, we totally went to the moon. But some people just love to believe otherwise.
Exactly. And speaking of filling in the blanks, let's move from a super secret desert base to the underwater world off the coast of Brazil. Because, why not?
Sure, why not?
This is the mystery of the roaming Roman ruins, and it's a good one.
Roaming Roman ruins.
So picture this, 1982, this guy, Robert Marks, he's a marine archaeologist and treasure hunter, right? He's exploring Guanabara Bay in Brazil.
Okay.
And he finds this, underwater field the size of 3 tennis courts, just covered in Roman jars. Some of them were even intact.
Roman jars in Brazil?
Front of Brazil.
Oh.
And not just any jars. These were like 3rd century AD amphorae, the kind the Romans used to ship stuff around, like grain and wine.
Okay, so the obvious question is, how did Roman stuff get to Brazil way before Columbus and all that?
Exactly. And it's a real head-scratcher. I mean, the Romans, they mostly traded around the Mediterranean. They did go as far as India, but crossing the Atlantic to Brazil, not really their style.
Not really, no. So what are the possibilities? Like a Roman ship got totally lost at sea.
It's possible. Like maybe a storm blew them way off course. Or maybe a mutiny, pirates hijacking a Roman ship and ending up who knows where.
That's wild. But are there any, actual clues, or is it just speculation?
That's the frustrating part. The next year, in 1983, Brazil just shut down the whole area. No more exploration.
They just shut it down. Why?
Officially, it was to prevent looting. But Robert Marks, he always thought the government was trying to hide something. Like maybe they didn't want evidence that messed with the story of the Portuguese being the first Europeans in Brazil.
That would definitely rewrite some history books. Speaking of old stuff, let's talk about a book that's seriously old and seriously mysterious. The Voynich manuscript.
This one is a real doozy. The Voynich manuscript is this 250-page medieval book, but it's written in a language no one understands. And I mean, no one.
So it's like a code.
It could be. They've carbon dated it to the 1400s, and it's got these detailed illustrations of plants and stuff, but they don't match any known species.
Real.
Yeah. And then there are these diagrams and charts, and no one knows what they mean either. It's named after this book dealer, Wilfred Voynich. He got his hands on it back in 1912.
So this mystery's been around for a while.
A long while. Some people think it was meant to be a medical text like a herbal remedy guide or something. Before Voynich got it, it belonged to this alchemist in Prague in the 16th century, Georg Beresch. He found it in his library, had no clue where it came from, spent years trying to decode it.
Dedicated.
Voynich had his own theories about the author. He thought it could be Albertus Magnus or Roger Bacon, these big medieval scholars.
But like a lost masterpiece of ancient knowledge?
Could be. But there are others who think the whole thing is a big hoax, that Voynich made it up, the book, the history, everything, to make it seem super valuable.
A hoax. But how do you explain the carbon dating?
Right. That's the thing. The paper, the ink, it all checks out. So if it is a hoax, it's a really, really good one. Centuries later, the Voynich manuscript is still just as mysterious as ever. It's like a message from the past that we just can't understand.
That's so cool in a creepy kind of way. Okay, let's go from a mysterious book to a mystery of life and death, maybe even beyond.
You're talking about reincarnation.
Yeah. Specifically, the case of the Pollock sisters. Did you know that about 1/4 of Americans believe in reincarnation?
I could see that. It's a fascinating concept.
It is, and most scientists are, skeptical, but then there are cases that make you wonder.
What kind of cases?
So in 1957, in England, there were these 2 sisters, Joanna, 11, and Jacqueline, 6. Sadly, they died in a car accident.
Oh, that's terrible.
Just awful. A year later, their mom gives birth to twins, Gillian and Jennifer. And as these twins start growing up, they start doing some really strange things.
Like a what?
They would ask for toys that belonged to their dead sisters, toys they'd never seen before. They recognized places that only Joanna and Jacqueline would have known. And this is the creepy part. They were terrified of cars. Like, panicking, saying things like, "That car is coming to get us."
Whoa.
I know, right? It's like they remembered their past lives. Now, these incidents faded as the twins got older, but it really caught the attention of this Dr. Ian Stevenson.
The reincarnation guy.
Yeah, he studied reincarnation cases all over the world. He even wrote a book, and the Pollock sisters were one of his top 14 cases.
It does make you wonder, doesn't it?
It does. Okay, from reincarnation to another tragic family mystery, the disappearance of the Sauter children.
Christmas night, 1945, George and Jenny Sauter, their house in West Virginia, catches fire. Devastating.
A house fire on Christmas. Oh man, that's awful.
It was. 5 of their 10 children made it out, but the other 5, they vanished.
Vanished, like in the fire.
Well, that's the thing. They searched the ruins, but there were no bodies. No
Right.
bones, no teeth, nothing.
But how is that possible?
I know, right? It doesn't make sense. And there was other weird stuff, too. George's coal truck wouldn't start that night, even though it was fine earlier. The phone lines were cut. Someone saw the kids in a car driving away during the fire.
Wait, what?
Yeah. And about a week later, 4 of the kids were supposedly spotted at a hotel in Charleston with some adults who didn't seem too friendly.
So kidnapping.
The Sauters definitely thought so. George had been pretty vocal against Mussolini, so they thought maybe it was like some kind of revenge thing, maybe even connected to the mafia.
Wow. So what happened? Did they ever find the kids?
Sadly, no. The Sauters put up a billboard with the kids' pictures, offered a reward, kept it up for decades. Jenny Sauter, the mom, she wore black every day until she died in the late 80s, never knowing what happened to her children. And the last surviving child, Sylvia, she still believes her siblings didn't die in that fire.
That's heartbreaking. Okay, let's talk about another missing child case. One that became a Hollywood movie. The disappearance of Walter Collins.
Remember that movie Changeling with Angelina Jolie?
Yeah, a little creepy, but good.
Based on a true story. It's 1928, Los Angeles, and this 9-year-old boy, Walter Collins, disappears.
That's gone.
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 5 months later, the LAPD, they bring this kid back to Walter's mom, Christine, and they say, "Here's your son." But Christine knew right away this wasn't Walter.
It wasn't.
Nope. And the LAPD, instead of listening to her, they called her crazy, accused her of being an unfit mother, and get this, they committed her to a mental hospital.
Oh.
Just for saying that wasn't her son. They even had doctors try to convince her she was delusional.
So what happened to the real Walter?
Sadly, he was never found. The theory is that he was a victim of this serial killer, Gordon Stewart Northcott, who was killing kids on his chicken ranch. But they never found Walter's body.
So awful. And the police, why would they do all that? Bring the wrong kid, then try to silence the mom. What were they hiding?
It's a good question. Maybe they were trying to protect their reputation, or maybe there was something even darker going on.
It's a story that just, it makes you lose faith in everything, really. Okay, let's move on to another disappearance, this time in 1946, Bennington College in Vermont, the case of Paula Jean Weldon.
Paula was an 18-year-old college student. On December 1st, 1946, she goes for a walk, a regular afternoon walk, and that's it. She's gone.
Just like that.
Like that. They started searching, mainly along Vermont's Long Trail. Some people said they saw a girl who looked like Paula heading that way.
So maybe she got lost.
That's what they thought at first. But they searched and searched, found nothing. No clues, no sign of her.
So what other leads did they have?
Well, this is where it gets weird. A waitress in Massachusetts said she served a young woman who looked like Paula, acting all nervous. Then, Paula's father, he goes to follow up on that lead, and he disappears for 36 hours.
Her father?
Yeah. So naturally, people started looking at him funny.
That's suspicious.
Right. And there were rumors that things weren't so great at home. Paula hadn't gone home for Thanksgiving, and apparently, she'd had an argument with her dad.
Oh.
Then you have this local guy in Bennington who kept saying he knew where Paula's body was. Twice he said that.
He knew where the body was.
That's what he claimed. But he couldn't lead the police to anything. No evidence, no body, nothing.
So what happened? Did they ever figure it out?
No. The case went cold. And without any real clues, people started coming up with all sorts of wild theories, even paranormal ones. Like this author, Joseph Citro, he called the area the Bennington Triangle.
The Bennington Triangle, like the Bermuda Triangle.
Yeah. He said there's this special energy there that attracts aliens, and that's why people disappear.
Aliens again. Well, with no evidence, anything is possible, right?
Right. From a missing college student to a whole crew of lighthouse keepers who vanished. The Flannan Isles lighthouse disappearances.
Okay, lighthouse keepers, let's hear it.
December 1900, off the coast of Scotland, on these remote islands called the Flannan Isles, There's this lighthouse. 3 keepers are stationed there. Thomas Marshall, James Ducat, and Donald MacArthur.
3 guys alone on a remote island. That
Yeah.
sounds peaceful.
You'd think so.
Mm.
But on Boxing Day, December 26th, the relief keeper shows up, and the lighthouse is empty. No keepers.
No keepers, like they just walked off.
That's the mystery. There's no sign of a struggle, no messages, nothing. The only clue was an overturned chair in the kitchen.
An overturned chair, that's all.
That's all. They searched the island, the sea, nothing. No bodies, no lifeboat, no explanation.
So what could have happened? Storm.
People have guessed everything. Rogue waves, foreign spies, ghost ships, sea monsters.
Sea monsters, come on.
Hey, I'm not ruling anything out. The point is, we just don't know. 3 experienced lighthouse keepers gone without a trace. Creepy, right?
Super creepy. Okay, from mysterious disappearances to mysterious animal behavior. The Overtown Bridge in Scotland and its unique problem.
Ah, yes. Overtown Bridge, beautiful old bridge near Dumbarton, Scotland.
Yeah.
But it has this really strange and sad reputation. Dogs keep jumping off it.
Jumping off, like on purpose.
It seems like it. And they usually jump from the same spot, between 2 parapets on the east side. Since the 1960s, around 50 dogs have died this way, and hundreds more have jumped but survived.
Well, why?
That's what everyone wants to know. Scottish SPCA, they've looked into it, but they can't figure it out. I mean, dogs don't usually just commit suicide,
Yeah.
right?
So what's going on?
Theories abound, of course. Some say the bridge is haunted. There was a story about a man throwing his baby off the bridge back in '94, so maybe it's that.
Oh, that's awful.
Yeah, it is. Then there's the mink theory. Apparently, there are a lot of mink in the area, and their scent is super strong. Maybe the dogs smell it and jump over the bridge,